Bay is, I forget, I don't have all the context, but the city of Half Moon Bay a while ago bought 555 Kelly Street, that little house right next to Ted Adcock. And they put out a RFP for development, and ALAS, along with, I'm going to forget which other agency they partnered with, successfully won that RFP and will be developing 40 farm labor housing units on that location for, I believe, extremely low income, and received a huge grant from the counties to support that project. It's going to take probably 3-4 years to develop it, but very exciting to see county and city coming together and really putting funding and resources behind developing new farm labor housing, which we, as we all know, we desperately need on the coast. So just wanted to make sure to mention that great project. So eventually we'll have 40 new, and those are going to be specifically for farm labor housing. And the city is also looking at other properties around the city that they can further develop into other low-income, below market rate affordable housing units. But thankfully, the first one they'll be working on is just for farm workers.
On what land is that going to happen?
If you can believe it, that tiny little house in between Our Lady of the Pillar Church and Ted Adcock.
There's room for 40 units there?
It'll be 4 stories. The first floor,
okay,
community kitchen and like a community room center and offices for wraparound services, and then the housing units will be floors 2, 3, and 4. I have not seen the design myself, but I imagine it's going to be an efficient use of space.
Right. Is it part of the old Bell building too, or
part of the? Sorry, I didn't quite hear that, Peter.
Is this project part of the old Bell building? The Bell building is between the Catholic Church and the Ted Adcock Center. Is that part of it, or that's excluding the old Bell building?
I'm not sure. It's the house. It's the little green house that's right there. I'm not sure if that's the Bell building.
The Bell building is a little bit further closer.
Okay.
To church. Okay, thanks.
Thanks. Another sidebar. Sorry, guys. That one felt like a good one to share, though.
No, that was good. I appreciate it. All right. Are we moving on to the next item?
Yeah, Natalie, you have your hand up. Did you have a comment?
Yeah, I just wanted to add on to Lauren's sidebar, which was great. Thank you for sharing that. I just wanted to say, I just hope and encourage the county to do whatever due diligence is needed to keep that farm labor housing, because like here in the other housing projects in Half Moon Bay, unfortunately, they're being housed by a lot of other people now, and the whole idea of farm labor housing, which it was built to be, went by the wayside. And a lot of farm workers, including the ones that work for us, have had extreme difficulty finding places to live, and they were not able to get into those housing units because unfortunately the idea of them being for farmers or for farm laborers isn't happening anymore. It just, even though that's why it was built, it went to the wayside. So whatever due diligence we can do, or what we can do in this committee to help to keep that to be the case, because it certainly sounds like a good project. That's it.
Agree. Well, are we ready to finally discuss our recommendations for ag tourism guidelines? I'm not sure if we were able, did we discuss this in the last meeting? The September one? Okay.
Ran out of time last meeting.
Okay. Let me just read this agenda item if we're ready.
Yeah, please.
All the way back to the top. Okay. Next up, we've got agenda item number 11, committee review of AAC subcommittee meeting notes on ag tourism guidelines. Topics to be focused on at the meeting will be the subcommittee meeting notes as provided in the accompanying discussion guide on length/frequency of ag tourism uses and farm dinners. And for a little bit of context, we in past meetings, if you want to go back, there's like all the subcommittee notes there, and we split up the topics. So there will be other discussion guides once we get through this one on kind of the other items that we are going to be making recommendations on. This one is just focused in a nice bite-sized piece, hopefully, just on frequency and timing, length and frequency of the ag tourism events. I guess I wasn't sure. It's like we never know if we're actually going to hit this one or not, but we are, and we've got full 50 minutes left of our meeting time. So, and it's perhaps one of my last ones here on the committee, so we should probably dig in. So there's kind of the two main categories of recommendations are about the length and frequency of the ag tourism event itself, and then the amount of farm dinners that we're allowed to have. So the historical context here on the first part of this, the length and frequency of ag tourism uses 45 consecutive day events twice per year. And of course, anyone jump in. I'm just going to start prepping this and jump in at any point, especially if you got better and more correct information than me. But my understanding is that that timing originally came from the idea of supporting the pumpkin and the Christmas tree farmers, in that the pumpkin sales for Halloween and then the Christmas tree sales for Christmas were generally around 45 days each. So that was the original, I think, design behind those 45 days. And so we were discussing many different options. What would it look like if they were allowed 60 days each? Or what if they were allowed one 90-day event? And in terms of the county, they're going to care about kind of not frequency, but intensity of use. So in any recommendations we make, we can't go too far afield on frequency of use and say, just do it anytime. Number one, that won't necessarily, the first goal of the ag tourism guidelines is that the ag tourism activities are second to the primary ag use of the site. So I think that's important to keep in mind. As much as we want to open up economic opportunities for the farms around here, the ag tourism lives between the the local coastal program, the LCP guidelines, and the PAD, the Planned Agricultural Development Guidelines. So we can't get too far afield in something that would trigger LCP or a PAD amendment. So we can't go unlimited. That's a very long-winded way of saying we can't totally go unlimited, but I think if we can make the case for expanding that, we could potentially recommend to 60 days, allowing one 90-day. That wouldn't increase the frequency. So that's a bit of the context on the first one. And
Lauren, could I say something, please?
Please. I'm getting
Okay.
sick of my own voice.
One of the comments that I made from the beginning was that whatever we decide, I don't want to take away what we have. And there's a lot of people that depend on agritourism and are happy with what we have and wouldn't mind seeing it broadened, but wouldn't want to see it lessened, and would get very nervous if we start talking. And I think everybody in the committee doesn't want to see it lessen. If we agree that it won't lessen, it will relax everybody a little bit. And I'll give you an example. Like if it was to go to 190 day, it lessens it, because by having 245 days, a person could have it for the pumpkins, and then they could have a gap, and then the next 45 days for the trees if they do pumpkins and trees. But if you have 190 days, it kind of takes that away. It lessens what we have. And so my thing is I want to make sure we don't lessen what we have. And if we can improve upon it and make it better or bigger, great, but not less. And I think if we all agree, if everybody feels the same way as me, that we won't lessen what we have, at least then whatever we decide, we'll make. And if somebody gets off track, everybody say, no, that lessens what we have, and we won't do that. If we all agree that, and it would make a lot of people a little bit more comfortable by knowing we're not lessening what we have. Thank you.
Yeah, I wonder if we recommendation to give options so that the 245-day consecutive days twice a year remains an option, but perhaps other options also exist for people with operations that might conform to a different pattern more effectively.
I get what you're saying, John, and I like what you're saying. Is basically is this whatever we decide upon that would say change a little bit would be another option, but we would always have the base of what we already have that won't be taken away, so we won't lessen what we have. And my thing is sometimes when we get thinking and doing this, and not intentionally, but we could be making some changes that without knowing, lessening what we have, and then one person that didn't want to see it lessen what we had would be kind of upset and say, "Oh no, I didn't want to see that because that kind of hurts me," and then could get nervous. Or at least that person won't, and other persons that don't want to see where it's lessened won't get nervous because we know that says whatever changes we make forward won't lessen to what we already have. So we know what we have is in concrete, and all the other changes that we agreed upon would be greater or better, but not lessen than what we have, if I'm making sense.
Yeah, definitely. And thank you for making sure we state that up front, Peter. That was absolutely the intention, the original intention of addressing this, of making recommendations, of having the subcommittee, was to expand the options for ag tourism permits and flexibility to help the farmers out. So that absolutely is kind of the number one goal of this entire project, and I think is important. And so thank you for saying that up front. And then just want to second what John was saying. So all of what we're discussing is suggestions in addition to. So in addition to the 2 45-day consecutive events, what else can we recommend that would help farmers out? Would allowing a single 90-day as another option be helpful? Would expanding it to 60 days be helpful? And Natalie, I'm kind of teeing this up your way because you actually use these ag tourism permits. So as someone who really lives this, what would be helpful for you?
Thanks, my dear. Well, I like the idea of 245s or 190, like that. Not 190 as 190, 190 day like that, because I like the idea. It's currently 245s. To be quite honest with you, if the county, if you think they'd be flexible with this, a really good recommendation would be something like 255 days or 90 or 100 if you need to make that less. Just because the problem is it's not just about the train and the snack bar and all that stuff, but as you know, with a lot of farms, when the agritourism part is going on, they put up a lot more stuff, and so then it's a matter of taking that stuff down. And what's happening, like with us, and a lot of the farms we're all getting older. So it's harder to get everything cleaned up, So if we have that extra time when, the selling season ends, it really, really helps. So I would say, if you all think that it's not going to be something that's just going to be thrown out the window, because I don't want to do that, but if we was able to say something like 255 days, 255-day increments, or 100-day increment, or if you think that's not appropriate, 190-day increment is fine. But just, or keeping 245s or 255s or 100 or 100. So then it gives choices. Yeah, because I don't want to take away from what we already have either. That's important. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And that's really helpful insight. And you're reminding me, so I do, cannabis permitting. I've done some cannabis event permitting, and by law, you're only allowed to have a 3-day cannabis event at the most. And I can't tell you how many times I've fought with the state to add a 4th day for packing out, because otherwise you run a 3-day event and you've got to pack up all that cannabis and get it off site by midnight. And the regulators are standing there tapping their feet. So anyway, sorry, sidebar, totally appreciate that.
No, but your sidebar makes sense. It's that is totally the case. That's a real deal,
Yeah. So questions. Yeah. So I'm wondering, in 55 days, so clearly I like round numbers. I'm like, what would it look like, if, say, the pumpkins were allowed to start? That would bring it all the way back to like Labor Day, and you could kick off like the pumpkin and have all of September and all of October. And then same for Christmas, you could kick it off November 1st and have it run all the way through Christmas. So you're saying 55 days? Any other thoughts on that from other farmers?
Or 60, because it's set
Yeah.
up and take down. Yeah.
Lauren,
Mhm.
the one thought that I had, and it's not to take away from this thought, that I was thinking about, we're having more and more farmers in the Pescadero area that they don't get the traffic like you do in the Half Moon Bay, so they're mainly open to the public on weekends. And I kind of would like to, instead of having consecutive days, like say if we have right now 245 days, if you have consecutive 2 or 3 days of total of, say, if it's 90 or if it's whatever it is, because you have people that are like, and Ryan can jump in anytime, will open on weekends only, and so that way give him more flexibility to do something just on weekends through a longer period of time. And when you pick up the CSA boxes from Fifth Crow, or there's Annual Huevo Tree Farm is doing pumpkins now, but they're open on weekends only, so that way you give them a little bit more flexibility to have a longer season of agritourism, but on weekends only, versus utilize their days for when they're open on weekends instead of consecutive. And that was my thought some time ago.
Definitely. And if I may
That's
just
a good idea.
offer
As
some
another
context.
option.
Yeah, but before Ryan jumps in, so this was a hotly debated item in the subcommittee, and Bill Cook, who isn't here, but if he was, I know he'd be saying this, really wanted to push for non-consecutive days and allowing complete open, pick your 45 days. However, that would significantly change the impact from a county perspective, was the feedback we got from Laura, again, like almost 3 years ago now, I think. And so I know we're definitely going to get county pushback if we open it up to whatever 45 days you want to pick the whole year. So if we did want to allow more flexibility, we would need to give it some guardrails so that it's not a complete change of use or impact on.
I hear that. We'll lean on you, Lauren, to let us know if we get pushback, so then we could back off on certain things if we get pushback.
So yeah, just some context there, but there was definitely a push to, just make it as flexible as possible. Sorry to cut you in line there, Ryan.
That's all right. I mean, I think we're here to push back on the county in favor of things that are going to benefit agriculture.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's a shame that we're limited by these things, but I think it's important that we voice that it's getting in the way of what we actually need. But yeah, I obviously these longer periods are targeted towards big events that require a lot of setup and breakdown and multiple weekends. But it would be great to have like an arugula festival 1 month and a broccoli festival the next month. You know, just like a day or weekend event or something, and be able to have a path to do that. So that's my biggest thing. Yeah, I'd like to see some non-consecutive days, an option added on to this, where smaller events that don't require that kind of setup and breakdown are possible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we do have language in here, Lauren, around the 12 non-consecutive events not to exceed 7 days.
Yes, thank you.
Was that, did we get feedback from the county that was a little bit like, oh, I don't know about having 12 separate events?
No, actually, no,
Okay.
it was just the full unlimited. And that was,
Yeah.
thank you for calling that out, because that was, I think that was Bill's idea, in that to allow that flexibility so that you could have a kind of a monthly event. So it wouldn't be any day of the year, but at least allow that month. And does that add up? What is 7 times 12? Does anyone remember their multiplication tables? 84 days.
84, yeah. So yeah, and I mean, I can imagine maybe somebody who's really figuring out like, oh, I can make a bunch of money by having like an event every weekend. They might want to push it, but I'm imagining, at least for myself or speaking for Ryan, that he's not really going to want to do more than 12 festivals a year. I don't
And I should
know,
also
like,
specify that things like CSA, that is prime agricultural activities. So community supported agriculture boxes, that's not ag tourism. And same, the pumpkin festival is certainly just strict tourism, but if it's something related to your core agricultural activities, that doesn't need an ag tourism permit. It's the bouncy house and the snack bar and all of the things you add on to
mhm.
a pumpkin, the pumpkin season and the Christmas season. And Summer, maybe you can add some more clarification here, but this was helpful of like, it's all the add-ons that aren't just selling your product to the customer. So if you want to do an
Lauren,
event
you could
that's,
say- yeah, I know that when I was talking to like Fifth Grove, when they have them come out on the CSA to pick up at the grounds, I was just kind of imagining something like them if they wanted to have a bouncy house and a small snack bar each time they come to pick up their package every weekend. This is another thought why I was thinking of the non-consecutive. But I know that the CSA alone is you don't need agritourism. I was talking about exactly like you said, if they want to do a little add-on while they're doing their CSA pickup at their farm. That's what I was thinking about.
Yeah. Or to like invite the CSA members from over the hill to come out on the weekend or something and do a bigger event where we're charging money for stuff that isn't strictly related to, like, hey, you're taking home vegetables.
Right. That's why I was looking for flexibility of weekends, and I get that we can't have it maybe as flexible as we like, but a little bit more would be good, because if you have two 45 days, which is 90 days, you're basically talking 3 months, or if it could be spread apart a little bit better, like 330 days, just thinking out of the box. I don't know. That way you could have it spread apart, so it could be targeted a little bit more weekends. So that way if you start when they're coming out in May, you could target May all the way to the end of October on weekends. And that's what I was thinking about for the weekend only farmer people. And when I say weekend only, meaning that they're not only farming on weekends, but they don't have the traffic, so they could make up to it by having a little more flexibility on weekends. That's what I was looking for.
I really like some of the ideas or the options you just threw out there, having 3. And I'm running with, like 330. So what if we did something like capping the days at, I don't know, let's say 120, because that's 2 times 60. So you can have 1 120-day event, 2 60-day events, or 3 40-day events, or 12 10-day events, but saying it's no more than 120 ag tourism days in the year, in a couple of flexible options. If you wanted to do one long one,
I like the way
shorter
you're talking.
ones.
Still keep
Yeah,
the
that
245
sounds
that we
good to
always
me.
have.
Yeah.
Or I would say make it 260 and then allow some like convertible options if you wanted to do 10 or 12 10-day events. So you could do a 10-day event every month, or 3 40-day events, or 2 60-day events, or 1 120-day event. You just want to do a fall all fall Christmas trees, pumpkins right into Christmas trees.
I hear what you're saying. I was just looking if there was any way possible of, and maybe there's not, is people that mainly depend on public to go to their property on weekends only, so they could stretch it out from spring all the way to end of October. So that way they're having maybe not as big as agritourism if you had one bouncy house.
I'm going to ask you to put a pin in that. I think that's going to be relevant for the next item that we're going to look at, which is the 12 farm dinners. That's when we were discussing really how to expand weekend events versus a full like season of an event, which it was just that this 45-day consecutive one versus like a weekend event. So that's really what we wanted to get to, and recommending expanding farm dinners from 12 to maybe 24, to maybe some more recommendations there on weekend events.
I hear you. If that falls on the next one, I'll just then quiet to the next.
Just a thought, but don't let me limit limit us with just, the past history of what we were already discussing.
Is there any way to give a different grace period for takedown or setup for these events?
There you go.
What would you say to that, Summer? We might need a planner input on that.
Are you thinking something where, just as a example, you say someone keeps, you keep the 45 consecutive days twice per year, but add on that either of those 45 consecutive days could include up to like 5 days prior or after that 45 days for setup takedown. Is that what you're
Yeah,
thinking?
because it sounds like
Mm-hmm.
part of the problem is that the time periods are a little short because they need more time to take down and set up, and
Mm-hmm.
if those aren't counted towards their agritourism days and it's its own grace period, I think that might be nice, or a strategy to extend it.
I think that's certainly an option to consider and recommend if the committee desires to set something like that up versus just having incorporating that into the overall. I guess either way could be an option to designate those a certain amount of setup and cleanup time or days, or to just lump it into extending instead of a 45 it goes to 60 or whatever, and you just have to do everything within that period.
I like that idea. I'm wondering if adding an extra classification of what type of days are permitted would be a limit in a way. It would be further limiting than the current one. But regardless of if we classify the days or not, I think that's really the motivation for expanding this.
Yeah, because it sounds like what Natalie wants is like to be able to sell, to have the agritourism venue generating income for those full 45 days, but because you have to spend a week setting up and a week breaking down, it's as though you really only have the site fully functional for less of the time. So yeah, I mean, I don't know if it's necessary for us to have multiple suggestions, but if it seems like, oh, 260s is too much, then we could counter with like, okay, well, if we have the 45s, we get the additional 15 days for setup and breakdown, to allow it so that you really get to take advantage of the full 45 days.
I don't know if it would be maybe provide a little more flexibility if you actually just did like a lump, like just one number, whether it's 60 or whatever, and leave it up to the operator to manage that 60 days. And maybe it only takes them, based on the type of event, it only takes them a couple days to set up and break down, and they have a little longer to actually be in full operation versus setting, say, you have 45 days with a 5-day lead time and a 5-day period at the end, where you may not need that full 5 days to set up or to take down, but that's only kind of designated for setup or takedown versus, if you had 60 days and you just get to manage it how you want. If it doesn't take you as long to set up or take down, you might have a few extra days to actually be in full operation.
Yeah, I think that's a good suggestion.
Has the 45-day period not been robust enough for these bigger events? I'm wondering if it's worth trying to expand that, if it's even necessary, or where we really need to be focusing on the smaller events that are not consecutive.
I just want to say it has not. It's quite a squeeze to clean up, because because of the agritourism, we're allowed different kind of signage that we don't normally have, and different kinds of other kind of things. And so it just takes a while longer. So it's always a squeeze at the end. But I like what John said about, okay, you know what, we're just gonna do like, 60 days and then all the other possibilities. So here's all the different things it could be. So it's not, it's or. So there's a lot of flexibility. And then if in fact the county balks at the 60, then we can counter with, okay, well, it's still 60, but 5 days on each end is just for setup and cleanup. But I think, bringing it 60 first and not putting all our cards on the table, because we really do need 60 because of the cleanup and everything. But like Summer said, just giving them that whole bunch first, because maybe they'll just say, okay, and that's it. I appreciate that the county has done this for us for agriculture, because paying $200 and something of whatever it is every single year is way less than what we would typically have to pay if we had to get a regular permit. So being exempted like this is great. So that's why I want to kind of work with them. But at the same time, that would be great. It would just be a big help. So that's what I'm saying.
Could I say something, Lauren?
Gotta ask John. I can't give you permission, but of course.
Yeah, please.
Yeah, I was on the agritourism subcommittee, and how they came up with 45 days is because they felt usually for the pumpkins, you're open 30 days, a week to set up before and a week to clean up after, and the same with the trees. But the seasons grew since this first started, and people are starting to open up their pumpkin stand as of the middle of September now instead of the 1st of October, and the tree farms are starting to broaden their seasons to try to make income to stay in business. So that's why for the 45 days came then. Now it needs to be increased to accommodate the broadened seasons that we have with the pumpkin and the tree farms to accommodate what they're doing. That's all.
You know what? I think let me trail on that really fast, if that's okay. I just want to say that if that can be put into the written presentation to the county of why more time is needed, I think it would really be helpful, because it is in fact changed. And in the old days, we used to have time to do the cleanup too. But nowadays, people are coming, wanting to get their Christmas trees earlier and earlier, and then they want to get them later and later. And people do the Russian Orthodox, which they celebrate after Christmas. I mean, there's so many variables that they didn't do before. So yes, it's getting bigger and bigger, and I think it's happening with all crops. So it's changed is the deal, and we're trying to do more with crops because we're so limited in what we can do otherwise in a lot of ways. So yeah.
And just to add on this, and I don't want to out anyone, but I just looked up, just because it's a well-known pumpkin farm, but Farmer John's Pumpkin Farm, and their opening day as announced was September 9th, which is 50 days before October 31st. So they're another anchor pumpkin farm, and it looks like they're also operating a little bit outside of the 45 days. So I think I would support recommending an expansion to somewhere between 50 and 60 days.
Yeah.
Okay, so the notes I have so far is that recommendation to add multiple options for permitted consecutive day ag tourism events, because both the pumpkin and Christmas tree seasons have expanded over the years. And the recommended options include 1 120-day event, 2 60-day event, 3 40-day events, and 12 10-day events. And an additional recommendation to consider adding an option for setup and breakdown days in the permit. How do we feel about that as a recommendation?
I'm just worried about having those setup days like written in the first go around, given to the county, like John said, just doing it, as the regular days, and then if we had to counter with that, if I understood what he said correctly, and I might not have, but I'm just wondering if we should put that in there right away, or maybe we should. I don't know. What do you think, Lauren? I'm just thinking.
I just adjusted a little bit to say that we want to expand the number of days because the seasons have expanded and operators need extra days to set up and break down the events. So that would mean the reasoning for the extra days are setup related.
Okay, so it's not that we're saying in this go around that we, that some of those days will be specified only to set up. It is basically that we're saying this is the reason we need it. So it's kind of like we're open the door for that if we had to. Okay, that's good. I like that. My opinion.
Cool. Awesome. Then my question is gut check on the options we were discussing, 120 days, 260 days, 340 days, 1210 days. Are those needed? Those options needed, or do we still just need the 2 60-day events?
More flexibility, the better, in my opinion.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
agree with that.
push for the more options.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree with Ryan. More
I
options.
do too. The more options, the
Lauren,
better.
John, if I could speak again.
Yeah, please, Peter.
I don't, I just want to say that in the Half Moon Bay area, and great for them, they get a lot of traffic onto the pumpkins every day. There's more stands propping up now in the Pescadero area. You have Anya Nuevo Tree Farm. They did pumpkins for a few years now. You got Yankee Flowers on their BJ's daughter doing the pumpkins, and actually Ryan at San Gregorio Blue House, and we don't get the traffic, so we got to depend on the weekends. That's why more options for us, if it could be possible, so we could utilize more of the weekends to try to make up that what we can't do during the week would be great for us and on the South Coast. Thank you.
Yeah, and I guess I'm gonna need to get up to plug my computer in, but so I may not be here when if I need to speak again, but just briefly. But I do wonder. I like the idea, like we kept on multiplying or dividing 120 by some number, and I do wonder if you went all the way to the extreme and you were like, what about 62-day events? And I wonder at some point it does become like so frequent that I could imagine the county being concerned, like, well, that just sounds like you've got every weekend of the year operation happening, which might work well for some businesses, but it maybe isn't in keeping with the original idea of agritourism. So I think probably I'd be interested to hear what others thought about it, but leaving it, like having it be like the 10 or the 12 events being kind of the maximum number that we're asking for, if that feels like that is enough flexibility for folks.
John,
Yeah, like I said,
we're second guessing what the county would say. They might say exactly what you say. No, that's too many. You're breaking it too far apart. It would be like, I don't know if Summer could give us some feedback. Would the county be opposed of, like you said, 62 days events, so it could be for weekends? Would the county be opposed to that, or 34 days? I don't.
This is Lauren, and I'll let Summer, of course, speak to that. But in the original subcommittee discussions, Laura said that would constitute year-round use and trigger the requirement for a PAD permit, which is, I think, Arata Farms is a great example. They don't do ag tourism anymore because it goes far beyond ag tourism. They have to get a PAD permit. So we're kind of trying to figure out where is that line that we can dance all the way up to give farmers as much flexibility without triggering year-round use and a PAD permit. So that's just the context from the notes. What's your take on that, Summer?
Oh, wait, before Summer, you go. Then Summer, help us. How far can we go with approval of the county? Go ahead now, thanks.
Yes, thanks. So yeah, I mean, I don't have the magical number. I don't know that, anyone would at the moment. It's something staff is gonna have to take a look at. There is some point though that it does become, like Lauren said, it's starting to, evolve into needing a PAD permit because you're just doing, every weekend of the year is this ag tourism event. But again, I don't know what the magical number is. I think that, as long as, I think what would be helpful for staff is, having some context to why, if you're wanting to expand from the 245-day consecutive 45 days, some context as to why that's necessary to be able to, have a viable agritourism operation, and
Yeah.
kind of what I've heard, in that, the seasons are growing and so forth, is helpful for us to understand the context behind it, because I think, we do want to try to, have some guidelines that actually make sense and is real, can really be applicable. And within some sort of limitation. But I think if you guys provided comments with some context as to the request for, say, 260 days, then, we would have the understanding of, that you need longer time, and maybe we can't at the end of the day give 260 days. We think that's getting to be too much into like a full-on PAD permit, but we would understand that, you would want as much to that, request as possible. And we would be able to kind of, if needed, back it down to, the maximum that we think would kind of hit that threshold, whatever that might be. So I would say, I appreciate, the committee's concerns about, presenting something that, the county will be able to accept. But I think to some degree, propose what you want, as long as, it's justified and you can provide a little context as to why that's needed. I think that will really help us in being able to take it from there, and then come back with something as kind of maybe a counter as to, you asked for this, we can't give you quite this much, because we think it goes over, but we can give you, 55 days or 50 days or something
Can I,
like
can I,
that.
oh, I'm sorry. Sorry, Summer.
Mhm.
I just wanted to chime in really fast because my battery's gonna die. I'm so sorry. But is it okay if I chime in quickly? I just wanted to say thank you. I just want to say, yes, if we could put on there, whoever's doing the write-up, a bullet point as well about those weekends, because in the rural areas, or the more rural areas, I should say, that's true, that the only time they really need it and that it's used to them is on weekends. And even with us, it wasn't actually until a couple of years ago that we started even doing it on Fridays as well. But right now we're only Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. But because it's set up for 45 days, we keep it 45 days. And most of the areas are like that, even the heavily trafficked areas like us. We want to keep that as an option, the 45 days, because we're really hoping to grow into more weekdays. But the more rural areas, they're not going to be able to survive because they can't do that stuff during the week. So for them, if we could put something in there that says in the more rural area, whoever's writing this, that Saturdays, and I'm proposing perhaps if you took that 120 days and you did weekends only, and then how many weekends does that encompass? Okay, that's a lot, but I don't know if that would work. But if it's weekends only, that could be another option. So you're basically taking this 120-day time frame and you're dividing it in what works for each farm, depending on their location and the growth of agriculture in San Mateo County in their area. Does that make sense? So that would be a huge reason to put that.
I want to, John, I want to speak again, Peter.
The thing. Who is what?
Yeah, go ahead, Peter. I mean,
What'd you say?
Natalie was talking still, but that's fine.
Okay. I just want to give this example, and
No,
like I
that's
say, it might not work, but I just still want to give my thought at least. If 64 days started May to the end of December, on weekends only, 8 days per month, 8 months. So it's not year round. It's starting in May when there's a lot of crops are growing that could start to be harvested. It could work to the end of December on different and variable different crops. That's 64 days. And or another option, if it was 3 agritourism times, springs, a farmer could do spring, summer, and fall. And that's really not out of the ordinary that you would have a certain crop that comes in early, that it would be in the spring, one would be in the summer, and one would be in the fall. But like I say, if it don't work, but the weekends only, even only 64 days, it says encompass from May to December. So you got January, February, March, and April. I says those 4 months that you're not doing it. So it is not year round, and it is weekends only. I says of an option for those other 8 months of a farmer that does have things that are going out there. It's only 64 days. Just to put it out there, that's all.
I got that in the
Thank you,
notes,
John.
Peter. Thank you. Thanks for suggesting that. I just want to do a little time check. I think we're having a really good conversation and we're all tending towards these non-consecutive events. So I think we've captured some, we're at a good place with the consecutive day events, and I want to make sure we have time to touch on the non-consecutive day events. And I'm realizing now and looking at the notes again, the non-consecutive days were really just the farm dinners. And what I'm hearing right now is that perhaps a use that's not specific to farm dinners, where non-consecutive event, non-consecutive day ag tourism event would be interesting and helpful for a bunch of farmers out there. With that in mind, I think I'm circling back to kind of so what Summer was kind of saying is that we're going to need to make a case for what that ag use would be. So maybe we can brainstorm a little bit. What would a weekend only ag tourism event from May to December look like? What would that be? Is that a farm stand that would fall under the farm stand stuff? Or is that maybe supplemental activities to a weekend farm stand during,
I would say
farmers
as
market?
an example, like a strawberry festival in May, which is peak strawberry season. And you want to do something special for the weekend beyond, like in my case, if I want to do something beyond the U-Pick or the farm stand, there, that wouldn't be like
have a
a
band.
45-day permit for it,
And,
Yeah.
Or-
But keep the consecutive ones too, because like,
definitely.
I don't want to wreck that, because then we're going to be taking stuff down, putting it up instead of selling our crops, a bunch of times. So keep
Yeah,
those too.
I'm not suggesting that. I'm suggesting having the option for smaller events.
Totally.
Exactly. Yeah. Good.
You take, Ryan, when do you start picking strawberries? What month do you start picking strawberries, Ryan?
Around April.
Okay, say, here's an example of Ryan. It's to say if he just had a little train ride, I said, when his strawberry starts picking, and it's bringing the people out about or whatever, and it says, and for them to lure them to his farm, and he starts in April. There you go, weekends only, and he picks berries all the way to the end of October. So, like I say, I could just visualize it. That's all I could say. And we got to be more creative on the south coast, because of we don't have the foot traffic during the week. So,
yeah.
And like I say, if it don't work, if the county won't let us, fine. But I just given my opinion, and
Yeah, and I think a lot of growers may end up opening their farms up to customers on the weekends in a way that would fit under the farm stand or other already accepted things that don't require a special agritourism permit, but it would be nice to have the option of say like, oh, well, we're gonna have a chef make lunches and we're gonna charge for lunches, or we're gonna have a train ride to the strawberry patch and people are gonna have to pay extra for that, or just so that allows for that entrepreneurial spirit to kind of express itself.
And like you say,
I'm wanting to get Ryan a train.
yeah, Ryan can do that, but
I'd ride that train.
But one of my farms is right across the creek from Ryan, and I'm off the beaten path. I wouldn't get nobody during the week, but if I was to open up my farm and say to do a U-pick, I says in the spring, and then it goes into pumpkins, weekends only open, and then if I go into say Christmas trees, I could see if I was to change in a verse that I could be busy starting from May all the way into December and having a small agritourism every weekend and not during the weekend. It would help to draw in the people because I'm off the beaten path. I'm off Stage Road. I'm not off of 84. And this is, I was thinking about myself, thinking about Ryan, and thinking about Fifth Crow and the people like that, us on the South Coast, how it could work and help. That's what I'm saying. So, anyways, thanks.
Great. This is really helpful for just building a stronger case. So I'm capturing all of this for the notes.
Right. And Lauren, I know we're running out of time, and we could always stop when it's time, and that's going to be in a few minutes, and continue this the next meeting. But I think we got a lot laid out and a lot of suggestions and all this here.
Agreed. Yeah, so we got 3 minutes left. I really like kind of where we're at with the consecutive and non-consecutive event stuff. I guess with the last 2 minutes, I'll just ask, and I guess really it's like if anyone knows the folks over at Harley Farms, ask them this question before next month, because I think they're the only ones doing like farm dinners that I know of down the South Coast. But the current farm dinners are currently capped at 12 per year, and they cannot happen when a consecutive ag tourism is happening. So if you're having a 45-day event, you can't host a farm dinner at the same time. But we were talking in the subcommittee about at least doubling that to 24, because those seem to be a nice way to both feature the local, what's being grown on the farm, and open up a new revenue stream. So we don't necessarily have to discuss it now, but maybe just planting that seed. And if anyone has some strong opinions off the top of your head, feel free to interrupt me so I stop talking.
Well, I know my oldest brother that's no longer with us, he was on the works of doing farm dinners, and yes, limit to 12, be able to increase to 24 would have really helped.
Yeah, I think it should be increased to 24, because this is another way for income for these people. It absolutely should be, my opinion. We should ask for that. If people, and I think one of the things you should put in there, Lauren, if you feel it's okay, is to say, these are also things that are helping to keep agriculture going on the coast and preserving it, because people will continue to do it if they can actually make a living off it.
Absolutely. Definitely agree. And as much as I want to dig into this second half of this conversation, we should probably not.
I had a question though.
59. What's up?
Was there a reason that it was kind of limited to 24? Was there pushback for having it extended farther than that?
No, not at all, actually. And so actually I'm reviewing the notes and like triggering, the memories from 2 years ago. So, and again, this was a lot of, I really commend Bill Cook for really kind of pushing us in the original conversations to see as far as we can go. So in terms of the notes on frequency, I have it's currently capped at 12 per year. We discussed a preference for an unlimited amount of farm dinners. However, ag tourism guidelines require limits in scale, location, and time. So we had to recommend something. So further discussion explored 24 to 30 farm dinners per year with no more than 8 per month, or 48 farm dinners per year, which would allow 2 farm dinners per weekend for 6 months. So those were the different options we discussed and thought were important enough to write down. But yeah, I think it was like, I know Bill was really looking like, you know, all summer, if you could have 2 per weekend, how much would that add up to?
I mean, I'm all for opening everything up as much as we can to help the people that are using them to survive.
Yeah, same. So we don't necessarily need to decide on that tonight, so maybe just a little food for thought for next month. Hopefully we'll be able to revisit this next month.
Food for
Lauren, are
thought
you
in the
gonna be
farm.
able to do this with us next month? What are we gonna do if you're not here?
Yeah, so what I and like I probably won't be leading the discussion or maybe taking the notes in the same way, but what I told Summer and I'll say for you guys too is I'm going to attend the meetings at least as long as this is being handled, so I can provide the context and make sure this doesn't get lost. And I can
We
certainly
really
prepare this
appreciate that, Lord, and we all thank you very
Thank you
much for
so
that.
much. Thank you. You're
I won't be
amazing.
able to vote on it. I won't necessarily be able to write the formal minutes, but I can for sure continue to help carry this project forward and make sure it doesn't, you know, it's like I feel like I've been carrying it for like 2 years, so I'm not going to drop it down.
Thank you so much.
No,
Well,
Honestly,
we all know Fred will be taking the minutes, so just, I'm just kidding.
He doesn't know it yet, but
He may not know, but
yeah.
okay. Well, it's 9:02. I
I
guess
think we should adjourn and continue this next month, and we're on a good roll.
okay. Thanks, Peter. Let's adjourn the meeting.
And it's
All right,
adjourned, 9:02.
okay.
We are adjourned.
We're adjourned. All right, thank you guys. Thank you very much. Okay.
Thank you.
You,
Okay,
Good
bye.
night.
Peter. Thanks, John. Thanks, everyone.